Imagine being locked in a tiny concrete cell for 23 hours a day. No human contact, no sunlight, just silence and isolation. That's not the plot of a horror movie, folks. That's a reality for thousands of inmates right here in the United States. These are places where the very notion of rehabilitation goes to die. Welcome to some of the worst prisons in America, where inmates face extreme punishments, brutal violence, and conditions most of us wouldn't even fathom. Today, we're going to peel back the layers of the American justice system and take you inside the most notorious prisons in the U.S. We'll expose the shocking punishments that take place behind bars. The kind of things that rarely see the light of day. Stay till the end, because what happens in these prisons will leave you speechless. Our first stop is a place so stark, so isolated, it's been dubbed the Alcatraz of the Rockies. We're talking about ADX Florence in Colorado, the most secure prison in America. This is where they send the worst of the worst. Terrorists, cartel kingpins, serial killers, the kind of criminals that keep you up at night. Imagine spending 23 hours a day, every single day, locked inside a soundproof concrete cell. Forget about seeing the sun, forget about human contact. You eat alone, you sleep alone, you even exercise alone in a space barely big enough to turn around in. The isolation is so profound, so deeply ingrained in the very architecture of the place, that it slowly begins to chip away at your sanity. The only glimpse of the outside world these inmates get is a sliver of sky through a narrow window. A cruel reminder of the freedom they've lost. Some prisoners, driven to the edge by this relentless isolation, have reportedly resorted to talking to the walls, to the pipes, to anything that might offer the faintest echo of human response. Can you imagine the desperation, the utter despair of a mind pushed to its breaking point? And the worst part? This is not some medieval torture chamber we're talking about. This is happening right now, in the United States of America. We pride ourselves on being a beacon of freedom. Yet we subject human beings to this level of isolation? It's enough to make you question the very soul of our justice system. But it gets worse. From the desolate plains of Colorado, we travel to the heart of New York City, to a place that's become synonymous with brutality and despair, Rikers Island. This isn't just a prison, it's a breeding ground for violence, corruption, and abuse. Forget about the romanticized image of prison life you see in the movies. Rikers is raw, it's gritty, and it's a place where survival is a daily battle. We're not just talking about hardened criminals clashing with each other, although that certainly happens. We're talking about a system so broken, so riddled with corruption, that it often feels like the inmates are pitted against everyone, including the people who are supposed to be guarding them. Rikers has been plagued by accusations of guard brutality for decades. Beatings, shakedowns, you name it. These aren't just rumors whispered in the shadows. They're documented cases backed up by eyewitness accounts and in some instances, even video evidence. Imagine being thrown into a system where the very people who are supposed to maintain order are the ones dishing out the most brutal punishments. Where a wrong look, a misplaced word, can be met with a beating that leaves you begging for mercy. And the violence isn't just coming from the guards. Gangs rule the roost in Rikers, their influence seeping into every corner of the facility. New inmates are often forced to choose sides to align themselves with one gang or another, just to survive. Imagine being a young, first-time offender, thrown into this cauldron of violence and despair. Your only choices are to become a victim, or to join the ranks of the predators. It's a lose-lose situation that speaks volumes about the brutal reality of Rikers Island. But the physical violence is only part of the story. Our journey through America's most notorious prisons takes us now to the deep south, to a place called Angola. Angola is the largest maximum security prison in the United States, a sprawling complex in Louisiana. But its size isn't what makes Angola so terrifying. It's the history that seeps from the very soil, the legacy of slavery that haunts this place. Angola was built on a former slave plantation, and for many inmates, it feels like they've been transported back in time. They're forced to work long hours in the fields, picking cotton under armed guards, echoing the past. Now I know what you're thinking. They're criminals. They deserve to be punished. But what we're talking about here goes beyond punishment. It borders on exploitation. These men, many serving life sentences, are treated as modern-day slaves, their labor generating profit for the state. And the punishments? Let's just say they're about as old school as the prison itself. Solitary confinement, often for years at a time, is used liberally for even the slightest infractions. Can you imagine spending years of your life locked in a tiny cell, with nothing but your thoughts and the crushing weight of your sentence for company? And then there's the violence. Angola is a pressure cooker of despair, where gang violence is rampant and guards rule with an iron fist. Inmates live in constant fear, not knowing when the next beating or stabbing will erupt. But perhaps the most disturbing thing about Angola is the lack of hope. Chapter 4: San Quentin Death Row and Despair. Our journey through the American justice system brings us to San Quentin State Prison, a symbol of fear and finality. California's oldest and most notorious correctional facility perched on the edge of the San Francisco Bay. San Quentin is a place where the air is thick with tension, every clang of a metal gate a reminder of lost freedom. Violence simmers just below the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. What sets San Quentin apart is its death row, where condemned men spend their final days. Their lives hang in the balance, their fate resting in the hands of the courts. Imagine the psychological toll, knowing your life could end at any moment. The constant anticipation, the endless appeals, the fleeting hope of escape. It's enough to drive a man mad. Conditions on death row are harsh, with decades spent in solitary confinement. Locked in a tiny cell for 23 hours a day with only occasional glimpses of the outside world. The isolation is profound, designed to break the spirit. It's a slow, agonizing death, even for those granted a stay of execution. But San Quentin isn't just about death row. The rest of the prison is overflowing with its own chaos and despair, overcrowding, gang violence, and guards struggling to maintain control. Chapter 5: Parchman Farm, Mississippi's House of Horrors. Our exploration of America's most brutal prisons takes us deep into the heart of Mississippi, to a place shrouded in infamy. A place where the horrors of the past collide with the injustices of the present. Parchman Farm, officially known as the Mississippi State Penitentiary. Forget the idyllic image the name might conjure up. Parchman is no farm, not in any sense of the word. It's a sprawling prison complex, a monument to human misery, where the echoes of slavery are as palpable as the scorching Mississippi sun. Parchman is notorious for its horrific conditions so deplorable that they've drawn condemnation from human rights organizations around the world. We're not talking about minor inconveniences here, folks. We're talking about systemic neglect, about a blatant disregard for human life. Inmates have reported living in squalor, their cells infested with vermin, the air thick with the stench of human waste. They've endured sweltering heat without air conditioning, freezing cold without adequate clothing, their pleas for help falling on deaf ears. But the lack of basic necessities is only the tip of the iceberg at Parchman. This is a place where violence is a way of life, where gang rule is absolute, and where guards often turn a blind eye to the brutality that unfolds within the prison walls. Inmates live in a state of perpetual fear, their days marked by the threat of violence, the knowledge that they could be attacked, even killed at any moment. They've reported being forced to fight each other for food, for basic necessities, their survival depending on their willingness to embrace the brutality that permeates every aspect of life at Parchman. And then there's the medical neglect. Chapter 6: Attica, Echoes of Rebellion. Our journey through the dark heart of America's prison system takes us now to upstate New York, to a place forever etched in history as a symbol of rebellion and brutality, Attica Correctional Facility. Now, Attica isn't just any prison. It's a place where the ghosts of the past still linger, where the echoes of the 1971 uprising, one of the bloodiest prison riots in American history, serve as a chilling reminder of the violence that can erupt when despair and frustration reach a boiling point. The Attica uprising left 43 people dead, inmates and guards alike, gunned down in a hail of bullets when negotiations broke down, and the state decided to retake the prison by force. It was a tragedy that shocked the nation, a stark illustration of the human cost of our broken prison system. But even decades later, even after countless investigations and promises of reform, Attica remains a place of violence and despair. Inmates still report harsh disciplinary measures, overcrowded cells, and excessive force from guards. It's a place where the legacy of the uprising hangs heavy, a constant reminder that the grievances that sparked the rebellion, the pleas for humane treatment and basic human dignity, remain largely unaddressed. Imagine living in a place where the very air is thick with tension, where every interaction with a guard could escalate into violence, where the threat of punishment hangs over you like a dark cloud. These prisons, these stark and brutal places, expose a dark reality about America's justice system. While some criminals deserve punishment, do they deserve torture, abuse, and inhumane conditions? Are we, as a society, comfortable with the idea of warehousing human beings in conditions that breed violence and despair? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. Is this the kind of justice system we want? A system that prioritizes punishment over rehabilitation, that breaks spirits rather than builds them up? What do you think? Should the prison system focus more on rehabilitation instead of punishment? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more shocking stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.